Have you ever made yourself small so others could take up space? Eleanor Hayes did not disappear overnight. She folded herself into quiet, into routine, into being useful. She was not forgotten because she lacked talent. She was forgotten because she stopped asking to be seen until one day, something shifted. Not loud, just enough. Enough to say no. Enough to wear color. Enough to stop waiting. Imagine this. What happens when the one who overlooked you finally turns and sees you standing in your own light? Would you soften? Would you stay silent? Or would you let them see the version of you that no longer hides? This is not just her story. It is a mirror for every quiet strength that was mistaken for weakness. Stay close. The woman you are about to meet might remind you of yourself. The sky over Reno was still pale. At 6:10 in the morning, the city moved slow. A truck passed by outside, its tires humming against the pavement. Inside a modest apartment on the third floor, a small lamp glowed in the kitchen. Eleanor Hayes stood quietly, waiting for her toast. 2 slices of whole grain bread, lightly buttered, nothing else. Her shoes were by the door, polished, flat, reliable. Next to them, a plain leather bag leaned against the wall. The microwave blinked 6:14. Eleanor checked her wristwatch. Still 5 minutes ahead of schedule. Just the way she liked it. The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee, no cream, no sugar, just strong and hot. The same way she had made it every morning for the past 8 years. She ate standing up, chewed slowly, not rushed, not lazy, just efficient. There was no music, no television, only the sound of her own breath and the faint ticking of the wall clock. She finished, wiped the counter, folded the dish towel, turned off the light. By 6:30 she was out the door. The bus stop was 2 blocks away. The air was crisp, dry. June in Nevada often began like this, quiet. Sun not fully committed yet. Eleanor's steps were light, measured, unhurried. She arrived at the Foster Media Group building at 7:02. Doors opened at 7:00. She liked being early, but not too early. It drew questions. The elevator chimed. On the 34th floor, everything looked as it always did. Polished floors, glass walls, soft lighting. The executive wing was silent. It would stay that way until 8:15. Eleanor stepped into her workspace, a small nook tucked beside the office of Graham Foster. CEO, founder, industry icon. Her desk was spotless. 1 monitor, 1 notepad, 1 pen, always the same black ink. She sat, logged in, opened the daily schedule, meetings, memos, call prep, travel confirmations. She worked with a quiet rhythm that almost felt invisible, and most days, she was. At 8:03, she brought coffee into the corner office. Graham was already on his second call, Bluetooth in one ear, eyes on the screen, fingers moving across the keyboard. He did not look at her. She placed the mug on the right side of his desk. The coaster was already there. She adjusted the handle so it faced him perfectly. He kept speaking. Tell Jared we cannot push Q3 again. If it fails, we replace the team. Then, with the phone still pressed to his ear, he said it. Thank you, Eleanor. You are always on time, like a Swiss train. Quiet, efficient, unforgettable. A beat. Then he chuckled. No, wait, I meant forgettable. The person on the other end laughed too. Graham smiled at his own joke. Eleanor stood still for half a second, then she nodded once, softly, almost invisible, and walked out. The hallway outside felt colder. She did not slam the door. She never did. Her steps were as quiet as always, but something in her chest paused. Not pain, not shock. More like a dull, tired ache, like hearing a truth you already knew, but still wished was not spoken out loud. At her desk, she opened a blank page on her computer, typed nothing, then minimized it. Instead, she checked the flight confirmations, 3 upcoming trips, one of them marked urgent, Lake Tahoe, 4 nights, executive retreat. Her name was on the itinerary. She had not been asked, just added. No one said why. No one needed to. That was how Graham Foster ran his company, decisively, impulsively, without discussion, and Eleanor. She made it look seamless. But that morning, something inside her shifted, not loudly, not even clearly, just slightly. She left the office at 6:03 p.m., right on time. Outside, the sky had turned gold. The sidewalk shimmered with heat. Back home, she changed into sweatpants, tied her hair loosely, boiled water for tea. She sat in the armchair near the window, notebook open, the same one she had kept for years. Mostly blank, except for work notes, schedules, ideas for others. Tonight, she wrote something different. I am not here to be sharp or soft. I am not here to be pretty or polite. I am here, and maybe that is enough. She closed the book, took a deep breath. The toaster clicked behind her, though she had not used it. The bulb in the kitchen flickered. She did not get up. The room was silent, but not empty, and for the first time in years, she felt the space she took up. Eleanor did not talk much as a child. She listened, she nodded, she stayed out of the way. In a small beige house outside Carson City, Nevada, silence was the rule. The carpets were always clean, the plates were always dry, no clutter, no noise, no questions. Her father worked for the county office. He wore brown ties. He read the newspaper every evening. He liked things in order, in control, in quiet. One night, Eleanor spilled a glass of milk. It was not loud, it was not much. But her father looked at her, not with anger, just with disapproval. His voice was calm. You are a good girl. Good girls do not cause problems. Then he picked up the paper again, kept reading, like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Eleanor felt it in her chest, like the air in the room had pushed her out. After that, she stopped raising her hand, stopped interrupting, stopped asking for seconds at dinner. Her mother moved like mist, always floating, always cleaning, always saying yes before anyone asked. Eleanor would hear her late at night, wiping down counters that were already clean, folding blankets that no one touched. It made Eleanor feel safe. And also, somehow, a little sad. She wondered if her mother had once wanted more, but never asked. Because in that house, no one talked about wants, only what needed to be done. At 16, Eleanor mastered the art of invisibility. She wore gray sweaters and navy jeans, flat shoes with quiet soles. She kept her voice low, her steps lighter than air. Her grades were perfect, not because she loved school, but because it was a place where rules were clear. Teachers called her respectful, mature, disciplined. Some said she would do well in life, but none of them knew her favorite book, or how she laughed when no one was around, or that she cried into her pillow once a month without knowing why. She became a shadow that people liked, easy, quiet, safe. And for a long time, that felt like enough. Her first job was at a dental clinic. She worked part-time, answered phones, filed charts, smiled politely. Older patients liked her. You are so calm, so helpful. Eleanor wrote that down in her notebook, not because she cared, but because she needed reminders of what made her useful. Be nice, be neat, be invisible. In college, she studied business. It was practical, clear, safe. Her dorm roommates were louder. One sang in the shower. One danced barefoot across the hall. They wore earrings the size of coins, painted their nails bright red. They took pictures of themselves laughing. Late into the night, Eleanor made tea, read quietly, folded laundry with soft hands. No one disliked her. They just forgot she was there. And she told herself that was okay. But late at night, sometimes, she wondered, what if someone noticed? What if she wanted to be seen one evening during her second year? She heard two girls talking outside her door. She is sweet, but kind of like a background character. Yeah, comfortable, but not exciting. They were not being mean. They were just being honest. That honesty cut deep, like a mirror you never asked for. She turned off her light, laid still in the dark. No tears, no anger, just a quiet ache that settled into her bones. At Foster Media Group, Eleanor kept her desk the same way. One pen, one notepad, one lamp, everything in place, everything controlled. Inside her drawer, under a folder of meeting agendas, was a photo. She did not look at it often, but that day, she did. It was from her college graduation. She wore a simple black dress. No jewelry, no smile. Her father shook hands with a professor. Her mother held her purse in the background. No one looked at the camera, not even Eleanor. They looked like strangers on a stage, not a family, not a celebration. She put the photo away, closed the drawer, opened her email. New messages arrived every minute. She answered them all without thinking, but her thoughts wandered. What would change if she disappeared tomorrow? Would anyone notice? Would anything fall apart? Or would someone else just take her place? Quietly, the question did not make her sad. It made her curious, and that was new. That night, Eleanor stood in front of her closet. On the left, buttoned blouses, black slacks, flat shoes. On the right, a blue cardigan, a summer dress with tiny flowers, and a pair of sandals she had not worn since college. She reached for the dress, held it gently. The fabric was soft, light, worn. She did not put it on. She just looked at it. And for a moment, she saw someone else in the mirror. Not a different person, just a version of herself she had not seen in a long time. She placed the dress on a hanger, hung it on the closet door, and left it there. Monday morning arrived with the usual hum. Eleanor stepped off the elevator at exactly 7:02. Same lobby, same marble floors, same scent of espresso drifting from the cafe downstairs. The air felt still. She walked past glass offices and quiet halls. The sound of her steps echoed lightly, a soft click with each measured move. She reached her desk, set down her bag, checked the calendar. Nothing unexpected. Team briefing at 10. Budget sync at 2. Dinner delivery for the executives at 6. Then, something caught her eye. A new event, marked in red, bold letters, Lake Tahoe Leadership Summit, 4 nights, all hands. She blinked, clicked, opened the itinerary. Her name was there. Under support staff, confirmed, hotel booked, flight scheduled, meal preferences listed. She had not been asked. There was no email, no message, just the calendar, another silent order, wrapped in professional formatting. She stared at the screen for a few seconds. She did not move. The image of the summer dress still hung in her mind, the one now resting quietly on her closet door at home. She reached for her notebook, flipped to a new page, wrote in clear letters, "I have been sent, not invited," then paused, underlined it, twice, By noon, Graham Foster walked past her desk. No eye contact, no greeting. Just a quick sentence. We will need investor packets, pre-tabbed by Wednesday. Bring your notes. He kept walking. She nodded, even though he did not turn around to see it. A minute later, her phone buzzed. A message from the travel assistant. Please confirm your packing preferences. Departure is Friday at 6:30 a.m. No name attached, just a task. She clicked reply, typed 5 words, then deleted them. The words were, "Do I have a choice here?" She stared at the blinking cursor, then closed the message and got back to work. That evening, Eleanor stayed late. The office emptied slowly. Lights dimmed across the floor. She stood by the large window in the executive wing. Outside, the skyline of Reno flickered gently. She could see the freeway stretching out of the city, faint tail lights weaving between pine trees. She thought about Tahoe, about the lake, the silence of water. She had been there once, years ago. As a child, in the back seat of her parents' car, they never let her swim. Too cold, her mother said. Too unpredictable, her father added. But she remembered the blue. How endless it felt. How honest. Later that night, Eleanor walked home instead of taking the bus. The air was warmer than usual, the sidewalks quieter. She stopped by a corner store, bought a small bottle of water, paid in cash. The clerk barely looked up. When she reached her apartment, the light in the kitchen flickered again. She still had not fixed it. She poured herself tea, sat by the window, notebook in hand. She flipped to a new page, wrote slowly, "I will go." But not as the woman who always blends in. She closed the book, looked at her reflection in the window, then turned away, not in shame, but in decision. The next morning, Eleanor woke early. She took out her suitcase, opened both sides of her closet. She placed her usual clothes on the bed. Blazers, slacks, 3 pairs of shoes. Then, without thinking, she reached for the blue summer dress, held it again. This time, she did not hesitate. She folded it gently, placed it in the suitcase. Along with it, she packed a soft linen blouse, a pair of silver earrings she had never worn, a book of poems by Mary Oliver, a journal, and a pen that felt good in her hand, not for work, for herself. Before leaving for the office, she paused. One last look at the dress on the bed, the sandals beside it, the photo from her graduation tucked into the corner of the drawer. She smiled. Not wide, but real. Something was shifting. Still small, still quiet, but moving. At 8:07, Eleanor walked into the break room. Ellie from accounting poured coffee. She glanced over. "Hey, Tahoe. Huh, fancy?" Eleanor nodded. "Company trip?" Ellie smirked. "Volunteered or ordered?" Eleanor exhaled through her nose. Almost a laugh. "Does it matter?" Then added, "But maybe it is time for something different." Ellie raised an eyebrow. "New job?" Eleanor shook her head. "No, just a new way of showing up." Ellie looked at her, not with judgment, with curiosity. "Well," she said, "hope they are ready." Eleanor smiled, then walked out. And for the first time in years, she did not feel like a shadow. She felt like someone walking into her own story. The suitcase lay open on the bed. Eleanor sat beside it, fingers resting on her knees, still, calm, but uncertain. The usual packing list was in her hand. Blazers, neutral blouses, 2 pairs of black slacks, toothbrush, name tag, laptop charger. Nothing on the list made her feel real. She folded the slacks, pressed them into the right side of the suitcase. but her hands paused over the next blouse. She did not want to wear it. It was not about style, or trend, or vanity. It was about truth. The person she had become, over the last 3 years, wore that blouse. The person she might be next would not. She walked to the closet, pushed aside the usual pieces. There, near the back, was a dress. Burgundy, simple, soft to the touch. She had not worn it since her friend's engagement party. That night, she had only stayed for 20 minutes. The others wore sequins. She wore silence. But now, the dress called to her, not loudly, but firmly. She held it up in front of the mirror. It fell gently at the knees. Rounded neckline, no zipper, no buttons, just fabric and memory. She did not try it on, not yet, but she folded it carefully and placed it in the suitcase. Next, she opened the small box on her dresser, jewelry she never touched, not because she did not like it, but because she thought it might draw attention. She found a pair of silver studs, a thin bracelet, and a necklace her mother had given her at graduation. A single pearl, no chain, just cord. She had never worn it. She placed them all into a cloth pouch, then into the suitcase. Her hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from unfamiliarity. Later, she sat by the window, notebook in her lap. The evening light painted the room in soft gold. She wrote slowly, "I am not hiding in this trip. I am not there to impress. I am there to be—" A pause. Then she added, "And that is enough." The next day, she visited a small boutique near the corner of Melrose Avenue. It was quiet inside, wooden floors, soft jazz playing from a hidden speaker. Sunlight filtered through linen curtains. An older woman with white blonde hair greeted her. Her voice was kind. First time and Eleanor nodded. "I do not really do clothes." The woman smiled. "You do you. The clothes are just support." Eleanor smiled back. She tried on 3 things: a sand-colored wrap, a cream blouse with gentle folds, and a dark green linen dress with pockets. Each piece felt honest, not loud, not trendy, but real. When she looked in the mirror, she saw herself, not the assistant, not the efficient woman who solved crises and vanished behind glass doors. Just Eleanor. She bought all 3, at the counter. The woman folded the clothes gently. "New job?" she asked. Eleanor shook her head. "No, same job. Different way of showing up." The woman nodded. "That sounds like a beginning." That night, Eleanor packed again. She removed 2 of the buttoned blouses, replaced them with the new cream shirt and the green dress. She laid the burgundy dress on top, like a quiet promise. She added the book of poems, a travel-sized candle with the scent of pine, a pen with a wooden grip. No one had told her to bring any of these things, and that made them matter more. Before bed, she stood in front of the mirror, let her hair fall loose. It curled slightly near the shoulders. She had not noticed that before. She studied her reflection, not searching for flaws, not searching for beauty, just seeing. She whispered softly, "You are allowed to be visible." And this time, the reflection whispered back, not in words, but in presence. The air in Lake Tahoe smelled like pine and water. The sun had barely lifted above the horizon. Light scattered across the surface of the lake, soft and golden. Birdsong echoed faintly through the tall trees. It was early. Too early for tourists. Too early for meetings. Too early for anything but silence. Eleanor stood at the edge of the pool. The resort was quiet. A few lounge chairs were still stacked. A sprinkler hissed softly in the distance. She wore a deep teal swimsuit, simple, elegant. A thin cotton wrap rested on her shoulders. No makeup, no earrings, just her. Her feet touched the water. She inhaled, then stepped in. The water was warm, not hot, not cold, just enough to hold her. She began to swim, long strokes. No splashing. No rush. The surface rippled gently behind her. Her body moved with ease, not as someone performing, but as someone reclaiming space. She reached the far wall, turned, came back. Each lap felt like an exhale, each breath her own. She did not think about emails, or agendas, or how she looked. She just moved. And in that movement, she remembered something: freedom. Graham Foster sat down under a white umbrella. He had arrived 15 minutes earlier, laptop open, phone on silent, iced tea sweating on the table. He had not expected to see her. At first, he did not even realize it was Eleanor. The woman in the water was different, graceful, present, unafraid. He watched her swim, back and forth, controlled, quiet. Then, she stopped, sat at the edge of the pool, hair damp, eyes closed, a small paperback in her hands. Graham leaned back. He told himself it was nothing, just surprise, just awareness. But something in his chest tightened, and he hated that it did. Eleanor turned a page, then looked up. She saw him, sitting under the umbrella, staring. Their eyes met, not long, but enough. She did not smile, did not look away, just saw him. Then returned to her book, calm, unbothered, whole. A man passed by. Early 40s, tan skin, light beard. He paused near her chair, offered a polite smile. Eleanor looked up, returned the smile, small, kind, not invitation, just connection. He nodded, continued walking. Graham noticed, and that unsettled him more. He stood, walked toward the bar, ordered coffee. Did not need it. Just needed to stand. The breeze picked up. He glanced back at the pool. Eleanor was still there. Towel draped over her lap. Feet in the water. Sun on her shoulders. She did not seem out of place. She seemed complete. Later that morning, Graham entered the strategy session. Eleanor was already there, seated, focused. She handed him a folder. Everything was in order. Color tabs, client insights, speaking notes. He nodded, said nothing, but glanced again. Her hair was dry now, pulled back loosely. Her blouse was soft beige. Her presence was calm. He opened the folder, reviewed the first page, then paused. You look... He did not finish the sentence. Eleanor looked up. Waited. Prepared, he said. As always. She nodded once. Yes, I am. Then turned her attention back to the screen. The moment passed, but something lingered. A change, not loud, but visible. That afternoon, Eleanor sat on the patio near the garden. She wore a dress the color of cream, loose, light, breezy. She held a glass of iced water, read quietly. A few guests walked by. Then, the man from the pool returned. He smiled again, this time, with a bit more spark. He asked about her book. She answered, genuine, present. They talked. Nothing loud, just human. Laughter came easily, not because of a joke, but because she felt light. Graham stood near the espresso station. He saw them. He recognized the man. Miles Walker, guest speaker, former startup CEO, known for clever sound bites and charm. Graham watched them for a moment, then looked away, but not fast enough. Later, as Eleanor stood to leave, Graham approached. Tomorrow's numbers, he said. We need to review them before the investor session. Eleanor turned slightly. I will be available this evening, she said. Right now. I am on break. Her voice was calm, not defensive, not challenging, just firm. Miles glanced at Graham, then stepped back. I will see you around, he said to Eleanor. She nodded, then looked at Graham. I will message when I am ready, and walked away. That night, she stood on her balcony, wrapped in a shawl, tea in hand. The sky above Lake Tahoe glittered with stars. She wrote in her notebook, let them look, but do not wait for it. She set down the pen, closed her eyes. The silence no longer felt like absence. It felt like space. The next morning, the main hall of the resort was already buzzing. Soft footsteps, pages turning, coffee being poured. The first session would begin in 30 minutes. Eleanor stood by the AV table, not tucked away, not hidden behind the screen. She stood where she could see the room and be seen. Her cream blouse moved gently as she walked. Her notes were organized. 3 folders, color-coded, no tabs sticking out. She checked the time, then walked across the room with steady grace. A few heads turned. They did not know her name, but they noticed her presence. Graham entered a few minutes later. He looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from something less visible. He took the folder from her without speaking. She did not speak either. Then he paused. You adjusted the agenda, he said. The flow is better. She nodded. Yes, it was needed. He looked at her, a beat too long, then looked away. The session began. Graham stood at the front, spoke clearly, commanding, as always. Eleanor stood at the side, not to assist, but to observe. She no longer felt invisible, not because others noticed, but because she had stopped erasing herself. Graham glanced at her once, mid-presentation, only briefly, but the glance landed and stayed. During the break, a woman approached Eleanor near the coffee bar, dark suit, sharp eyes, senior partner from another firm. I have seen you in 3 sessions already, she said. You run things quietly, but effectively. Eleanor smiled gently. That is the goal. The woman tilted her head. No, most people run loudly. You, hold space. She walked away. No further comment. Eleanor stood still for a moment, then looked out the window. The lake shimmered. The wind moved slowly through the trees. Inside her, something settled. Not pride, but peace. Later, Eleanor returned to the meeting room. Graham was already there. He was reviewing the investor packets, brows furrowed, notes spread across the table. She stepped in. He looked up. Did you reprint the client bios? Yes, with updated metrics. She handed him a new stack. He flipped through them, stopped at one. This change. Did you make this call? Yes. It was outdated. I verified with the team. He looked at her. Longer this time. That was smart. She did not smile. That was necessary. He nodded. You are different this week. No, she said. I am the same. You are just seeing more. He said nothing, but he heard it. That afternoon, a translation error appeared in the digital slides. The interpreter froze. Eleanor noticed it from across the room. She stepped forward, corrected it, quietly, clearly, without pause. No one asked her to, but everyone watched. Afterward, the moderator approached her. Thank you. That could have delayed the entire session. She nodded. I was just doing my part. But inside, she knew. That was not entirely true. She was doing more than her part. She was doing what no one had expected from her, but should have. Later that evening, she passed Graham in the hallway. He stopped. We never reviewed the numbers. I sent you the final deck. You did. He paused. Then added, you made it stronger. I know. A small silence, not tense, not awkward, just real. That night, Eleanor did not attend the group dinner. She sat on her balcony, wrapped in her shawl, watching the moon rise over the hills. She wrote in her notebook, you cannot be both useful and invisible forever. At some point, the work will speak, and so will you. She closed the cover, looked at the stars, and knew she had not changed overnight. She had simply stopped waiting and started choosing. The night was still. Only the soft rustle of pine trees and the faint sound of water brushing against the shore. Eleanor sat on the balcony of her suite, wrapped in her shawl. A cup of tea rested between her hands. The steam rose slowly, like a breath she had waited all day to release. The light from the room behind her was low, muted, the kind of quiet that lets truth rise gently. Then, a knock. Soft, measured. She opened the door. Graham stood there. No jacket, just a dark shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. His eyes looked unsure. Do you have a minute? She looked at him, then stepped aside. Yes. Come in. They sat on the balcony, 2 chairs, a small table between them. She poured him tea. He took it without a word. For a moment, they just listened, to the wind, to the water, to the space they had never shared like this before. Then Graham spoke. I owe you something. She looked over. Calm. What do you think it is? He hesitated. Respect. And maybe acknowledgement. She waited. I did not mean to treat you as invisible, he said. But I think I did. Her voice was soft, not angry. You did, but I let you. The words landed gently, but with weight. They sat in the air. Not heavy, just true. Eleanor turned slightly toward him. I learned to disappear a long time ago. Not because I wanted to, because it felt easier. He listened, quiet now, more still than she had ever seen him, easier than explaining who I was, what I needed, what I deserved. He looked down at his hands. I do not ask many questions. I expect people to adapt to my pace, my rules. She nodded slowly. You do. Their eyes met, and you did. He added, for a long time. A wave crashed louder below. Then silence again. Eleanor leaned back slightly. It is strange, how easy it is to shrink yourself a little each day, until one morning, you cannot find the edges anymore. Her voice did not shake. This was not pain. This was truth. I wore clothes that erased me, avoided mirrors, answered questions with nods. No one noticed. Until I changed. Graham stayed quiet, then finally said, I noticed, but I did not know how to respond. She gave a small smile. That is honest. He looked at her again. When I saw you by the pool, you looked like someone I had never met, but also someone I should have. She said nothing. He continued. And today, when you said no, when you drew a line, he exhaled. Unsteady, she set down her tea. Graham, I do not need you to admire me, or regret anything. I need to know that the way I live now, openly, fully, is not a problem for you. His voice was low. It is not. It is something I respect. A pause, and I am still figuring out what that means. For me. The moon had risen fully now, casting light on the balcony, silver and soft. Eleanor leaned forward. I think I used to want you to notice me. I do not anymore. He blinked. She continued. I want to be seen, yes, but not rescued, not pursued like a prize, just understood, as I am. Graham looked down, then back at her. I do not know if I can be the person who gives you that, but I want to try. She studied his face, not looking for promises, only honesty. That matters more than trying to impress me. The wind picked up slightly. She stood, walked to the railing. He followed. They stood side by side. Neither spoke, but the silence felt different now. Less like distance, more like space. She turned to him. Thank you for coming, and for saying it. He nodded. Thank you for listening. She gave a small smile, then stepped back. Good night, Graham. Good night, Eleanor. He walked away, and for the first time in a long while, she did not feel small. She felt seen, but more importantly, she had seen herself. The sky over Lake Tahoe turned soft gray. Clouds moved slowly across the early morning light. Birds skimmed the surface of the lake, silent and low. Inside the conference hall, everything was moving. People checked name tags, clicked pens, poured coffee, but Eleanor walked in differently. No clipboard, no headset, no rush. She wore a pale ivory dress, clean lines, no pattern, no flash. But something about the way she moved made people turn, not because of beauty, but because of presence. She moved with quiet certainty, with rhythm, with peace. She passed the front desk, picked up a revised seating chart, adjusted it, without being asked, then walked over to the interpreter, confirmed the mic setup, offered a note in writing. The interpreter looked relieved. Thank you. No one else caught that. Eleanor nodded once. It matters. No more words. She walked away. The room kept buzzing, but she was steady. Graham arrived 10 minutes before the keynote. He saw her from across the room, no folder in hand, no urgent step. She handed him a printout, brief, clean. Updated slides. Your mic is at the podium, water on the right, room temperature adjusted. He took it, paused. Thank you. She looked up. That is true. He blinked, then gave a slight nod. She walked off. No more instructions. No more approval needed. During the keynote, she stood at the edge of the room, near the AV table, just far enough. She was not taking notes. She was not checking the clock. She was simply there, calm, present. At one point, Graham looked her way. His voice did not falter, but his eyes softened. She was no longer the assistant who blended in. She was the one who held things together, even when no one noticed. Now, they noticed. After the session, the room filled again. Voices, laughter, handshake after handshake. Eleanor moved among them, not lost, not unsure. Someone from marketing asked her to review a slide. She gave 2 clear suggestions. They used both. An investor paused beside her. Are you on the leadership team? She smiled gently. Not officially. He looked impressed. Well, you carry the room like you are. She said nothing, just nodded, and walked away. Later, on the patio, she removed her heels, set them neatly beside her chair, let her feet touch the cool tile. She held a glass of sparkling water, watched the sky shift above the lake. No agenda, no phone, just quiet. And in that quiet, she felt something new, not a rush, not a thrill, but belonging. Graham watched from a distance. He stood at the edge of the glass doors, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a folder he no longer needed to read. Eleanor did not see him. She was watching a small bird hop across the patio, smiling, not wide, but true. He turned, walked away. He did not want to interrupt peace that was not his to own. That evening, the sun dipped behind the hills. The lake shimmered like melted glass. People gathered for dinner. Soft lights hung across the terrace. Dishes clinked. Chatter moved like a stream. Eleanor stood near the railing. Her hair was down. The breeze moved it gently across her shoulders. She wore a seafoam green dress. Light, honest. Unapologetically hers. Behind her, someone approached, but she did not turn, not yet. She stayed with the stillness for one more breath, then turned. The last light of the day folded into the mountains. The conference center emptied slowly. People packed their things. Laughter echoed softly in the hallway. Eleanor sat outside, a glass of water beside her, her sandals off, toes resting against the cool stone floor. She was alone, but not lonely. She watched the colors in the sky shift, from gold to lavender, then to deep blue. A small bird landed near her chair, hopped once, then flew away. She smiled, no urgency, no performance, just presence. Graham stepped out from the main building. He saw her, unaware of him. She was still, eyes calm, body quiet. He did not call her name, did not move closer. He simply watched, not with want, not with guilt, just a man seeing someone he had never really known. Even after 3 years, he stood there for a long moment, then turned and walked away. Not because he did not care, but because he finally understood something. Peace is not his to interrupt. That night, the final dinner began. Soft music, low voices, a sky full of stars. Eleanor stood near the railing of the garden terrace, her arms resting gently along the stone edge. She wore a dress the color of seafoam. It moved with the wind, not for attention, but for comfort. Behind her, Graham approached. He stopped a few feet away, did not speak at first, then, finally. "You are hard to miss tonight." She did not turn right away, then smiled. "That is new for me." A pause. I noticed. She turned slowly. He was not in a suit, just slacks and a white shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled, no perfection, just real. The version of Graham she had never seen until now. He took a step closer, still left space between them. "I came to say something." She nodded. "Go ahead." His voice lowered. "You are remarkable. You always were. I just did not know how to see it." He looked down, and watching others notice what I ignored, it made me realize how badly I misjudged what mattered. Eleanor listened, not with surprise, not with anger, just honesty. He kept going. "I cannot take back what I missed, or how long it took. But if you are open to it, I would like to start again, not as your boss, but as someone who wants to know the version of you that no longer waits to be noticed." She looked at him, then at the sky. The breeze moved gently between them. She stepped a little closer, not to close the space, but to make her words clear. For a long time, I would have said yes without thinking. I would have been grateful just to be chosen. Her voice was steady, but that version of me does not exist anymore. He stayed silent. She continued. The Eleanor standing here now knows her worth. She knows love cannot be born from guilt, or loneliness, or sudden attention. A breath. It has to come from recognition, and from choice. He nodded. "That is fair." She tilted her head slightly. "But this Eleanor might be open to a coffee." A pause. "As two people. Not roles, not habits, just people." Graham smiled. A real smile. "I would like that very much." She extended her hand. "Hi, I am Eleanor Hayes. It is nice to meet you." He took it gently. "Graham Foster. The pleasure is mine." They stood like that, Not as boss and assistant, not as past and future, just two people who had missed something important, now ready to see. The final morning came quietly. The resort stirred in soft waves. Bags rolled across stone paths. Shuttle vans lined up near the entrance. Guests in suits and sunglasses said their goodbyes. But Eleanor was not rushing. She had already packed, already checked out, already let go of the version of herself she used to carry. Now, she stood at the edge of the lake, barefoot. The shore was cool beneath her feet. The wind lifted her hair gently. She wore a simple linen dress, the same one from her first day here. But she wore it differently now, not as armor, not as apology, as herself. She looked out across the water, not searching, just seeing. The lake shimmered, wide, still, alive. She remembered her first visit here as a child, in the back seat, window rolled up. She had stared at this same water, but back then, she thought beauty was meant to be observed, not entered. Now she knew better. Behind her, footsteps approached, soft, familiar. She turned slightly. Graham stood a few steps away, not close, not distant. His hands were in his pockets. No suit, no title, just a man in morning light. He looked at her, not with longing, not with regret, with respect. He nodded once. "You are leaving soon." She nodded back. "Yes. My car comes at 10. A quiet pause. "I wanted to say goodbye in person," he said, "and thank you." She tilted her head. "For what?" "For showing up. For teaching me that silence is not the same as absence, and that presence does not have to be loud." She smiled, not for him, for herself. "Thank you for listening," she said. "It took you a while, but you did." He nodded again. "Take care, Eleanor. You too. Graham." They did not hug. They did not linger. Just two people. Not unfinished. Not defined by what might have been. Only respectful of what was. Back in her room, she zipped the last pocket of her suitcase, placed a small notebook into her tote. The same notebook she had once used for meetings and agendas. Now, it held something else. Pages filled with sentences that belonged only to her, not to the job, not to anyone else. She ran her hand along the cover, then closed the bag. On the plane, she sat by the window. She opened the notebook, turned to the last page, and wrote slowly. "I was never invisible. I was just quiet. And now, I choose to be seen." She underlined it. Once, then looked outside. The clouds moved like soft hills beneath her. The world stretched wide, and for the first time in years, Eleanor Hayes did not feel small. She felt steady, and whole, and quietly, free. Sometimes in life, we learn to stay quiet, not because we have nothing to say, but because we believe it keeps the peace. We make ourselves smaller, so others can lead, so the world stays in order. But over time, that silence grows heavy. And one day, we ask ourselves, is this who I am, or who I have become to survive? Eleanor's journey reminds us of something simple, but powerful. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to speak with a steady voice. Even if you have stayed silent for years, you do not need to be loud to be strong. You do not need permission to be seen. It is never too late to return to yourself. Not at 40, not at 60, not ever. And when you do, you might find that the world around you changes too. Not because it sees you differently, but because now you see yourself. Thank you for spending your time with this story. If it touched something in your heart, please consider giving it a like, share it with someone who may need it, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that speak gently, but stay with you long after they end.